It begins with a whisper from over 200 million kilometers away, a transmission, cold and digital, carrying the silent gaze of a machine that has wandered across a sea of ochre dust. In the summer of 1976, the Viking 1 orbiter, spinning gracefully above the Martian surface, released a series of images that would ignite a fever of speculation and wonder. Among them, a black and white photograph, a stark sunlit plateau in the region called Cydonia, where shadows stretched long and angular across the rust-red plains. There, nestled among the undulating hills and battered craters, rose a formation, a shape that seemed to defy the randomness of geology. A pyramid, some claimed, or perhaps several, scattered in the Martian silence, their sharp edges and flat faces catching the sun with uncanny precision. The image flickered across the screens at NASA's Jet Propulsion Laboratory, then leaked into the world beyond, seeding a question that would grow roots in the fertile soil of human imagination. What are these Martian pyramids, and who, if anyone, built them? The first reports were cautious, almost clinical. NASA scientists poring over the Viking images cataloged the features of Cydonia: mesas, buttes, plateaus, and a smattering of odd, angular mounds. Yet the photograph that would become infamous, the so-called face on Mars, sat not far from a cluster of formations that, when seen from above, appeared eerily geometric. In the following years, the images circulated among planetary geologists and the public alike, spawning a cottage industry of speculation. Some saw only rocks and the inexorable handiwork of wind and time. Others saw the vestiges of a lost civilization, their monuments crumbling under a thin sky. The debate, fueled by grainy images and the human tendency to seek patterns, became a crucible for the hopes, fears, and obsessions that always accompany our quest to find meaning in the void. The Martian surface is a palimpsest, its story written and overwritten by eons of violence and change. To understand the context of these formations, one must first traverse the geological epochs of Mars, reading the language of stone and dust. The red planet, though smaller than Earth, is a world scarred by ancient cataclysms. Gigantic volcanoes like Olympus Mons, the tallest in the solar system. Canyons that dwarf the Grand Canyon. Impact basins so vast they reshape the planet's gravitational field. Its thin carbon dioxide atmosphere offers little protection from the sun's rays, and fierce winds whip the landscape into ever-shifting dunes. Yet it is these very forces, volcanism, impact, erosion, freeze-thaw cycles, that carve the Martian surface into forms both familiar and alien. Geologists speak of mesa and butte, terms borrowed from the American Southwest, where wind and water sculpt flat-topped hills and isolated columns from sandstone and basalt. On Mars, the same processes prevail, albeit under the slow tyranny of time. The Cydonia region, where the pyramid-like formations reside, is a patchwork of ancient floodplains, eroded plateaus, and scattered debris left by vanished rivers. Here, the interplay of wind erosion and ancient lava flows has produced a landscape where straight edges and geometric contours are not uncommon. Yet among these, the so-called pyramids stand out. Tall, angular, their faces oriented in ways that seem almost too regular for nature's hand. The human brain, honed by millions of years of evolution to detect patterns in chaos, is both a marvel and a liability. In the shifting light of the Martian dawn, a play of shadow and sun can transform an ordinary hill into something extraordinary. Psychologists call this Pareidolia, the tendency to see meaningful shapes, in clouds, in rocks, in the random scatter of stars. It is a phenomenon as old as humanity itself, responsible for the constellations that guided our ancestors and for the faces we glimpse in the mottled grain of wood. On Mars, Pareidolia is amplified by distance and desire. The pixelated images from Viking, each pixel spanning dozens of meters, invite interpretation, their ambiguity a canvas upon which we project our dreams and fears. Yet the allure of the Martian pyramids is not merely a trick of perception. The shapes themselves are striking. Some with four faces, others with triangular profiles, their slopes converging to a summit. The largest, dubbed the D&M Pyramid, after researchers Vincent Di Pietro and Gregory Molinar, rises nearly 2 kilometers from base to tip, its facets arranged at angles reminiscent of the Great Pyramid of Giza. In 1982, British writer and engineer Richard Hoagland published The Monuments of Mars, arguing that these formations taken together constituted a city plan, an artificial complex, perhaps the relic of a vanished race. His diagrams, mapping the spatial relationships between the pyramids, the face, and other features, suggested alignments and ratios evocative of sacred geometry. Scientists, for their part, responded with skepticism and rigor. The Viking images, they argued, were too coarse to yield definitive answers. Lighting conditions, viewing angles, and the limitations of early digital cameras all conspired to create illusions of symmetry and order. In 1998, and again in 2001, the Mars Global Surveyor Orbiter returned to Cydonia, its high-resolution camera slicing through the ambiguity of the old images. The face dissolved into a lumpy mesa, its features softened by the sun's higher angle. The pyramids, too, lost some of their mystery, their sharp lines revealed as the jagged products of erosion and collapse. Yet even as the evidence for artificiality waned, the fascination endured. The question, once asked, is not so easily unasked. Could there have been, at some unimaginable remove in time, a civilization on Mars capable of shaping stone into monument? To answer this, one must descend into the labyrinth of planetary science, sifting through data from orbiters, landers, and rovers. Mars today is a world of extremes, cold, dry, and desolate, but it was not always so. Geological evidence gathered by missions like NASA's Spirit, Opportunity, and Curiosity rovers paints a picture of a wetter, warmer planet in the distant past. River valleys, delta deposits, and clay minerals speak of ancient lakes and perhaps even seas. The search for life, past or present, is driven by these clues, a hope that somewhere beneath the frozen regolith, microbial fossils or organic molecules await discovery. But civilization is another matter. The hallmarks of intelligent construction, regularity, symmetry, alignment with astronomical events, are paradoxically also the hallmarks of certain geological processes. Crystals grow in perfect symmetry. Basalt columns form hexagonal patterns. Tectonic stresses fracture rocks along straight lines. On Mars, the slow grinding of wind and the abrupt violence of impacts have, over billions of years, sculpted landscapes that can, from certain angles and under certain lights, mimic the architecture of intelligence. In 2006, the high-resolution imaging science experiment, HiRISE, aboard the Mars Reconnaissance Orbiter, delivered images of Cydonia and other anomalous regions with a clarity far surpassing Viking's capabilities. The pyramid-like mounds, when viewed up close, revealed chaotic surfaces, fractured summits, and the unmistakable signatures of natural erosion. The regularity seen from afar dissolved into the randomness of stone and dust. Geological modeling, conducted by researchers at institutions like the U.S. Geological Survey and the Planetary Science Institute, demonstrated how volcanic activity, followed by aeolian, wind-driven erosion, could produce flat-topped mesas with steep, angular sides, features that, by chance, sometimes resemble pyramids. Yet the debate persists, fueled in part by the limits of our knowledge and the persistence of mystery. For every high-resolution image debunking an anomaly, new photographs from different regions, Elysium, Argyre, the foothills of Olympus Mons, reveal fresh puzzles. The Martian landscape, so alien and yet so oddly familiar, resists easy explanation. In the shadowed corridors of the internet and in the pages of speculative books, theories multiply. Ancient astronauts, lost cities, forgotten gods. The yearning for connection, for proof that we are not alone, drives a relentless search for meaning among the rocks. To truly grasp the allure of the Martian pyramids, one must journey back through the history of our own fascination with Mars. For centuries, the Red Planet has been a mirror for human dreams and anxieties. In the 19th century, astronomers like Giovanni Schiaparelli and Percival Lowell peered through telescopes and saw canali, channels they interpreted as the handiwork of Martian engineers. Lowell, in particular, became convinced that Mars was crisscrossed by a vast network of canals, built to carry water from the poles to dying cities at the equator. His books, widely read and passionately argued, ignited a popular imagination that would fuel science fiction for decades. H.G. Wells' The War of the Worlds, Edgar Rice Burroughs' Barsoom novels, and countless others. The reality, of course, proved more prosaic. The canals were optical illusions, artifacts of imperfect lenses and the brain's hunger for order. Yet the legacy of those first Martian dreams endures, echoing in every new image and every new discovery. The pyramids of Cydonia are but the latest incarnation of an ancient impulse, the desire to find ourselves, or our makers, in the cosmos. The science of planetary geology is a discipline both precise and humble, grounded in the methodical accumulation of data and in the recognition of nature's capacity for surprise. In the decades since Viking, missions like Mars Odyssey, Mars Express, and the Curiosity rover have mapped the Martian surface in exquisite detail. Techniques like spectroscopic analysis, radar sounding, and 3D terrain modeling have revealed the composition, structure, and history of the enigmatic formations. The D&M Pyramid, like its neighbors, is composed of basaltic rock, its strata tilted and fractured by ancient tectonic forces. Layered sediments and erosion patterns betray the slow passage of time. A billion years of wind and frost, carving and collapsing, giving rise to shapes that for a fleeting moment mimic the works of intelligence. Yet for all the rigor of science, the question persists, lingering at the edge of reason. What if? It is a question that transcends evidence, rooted in the deeper mysteries of consciousness and perception. The search for meaning among the Martian rocks is, ultimately, a search for ourselves, for the origins of intelligence, the universality of art and architecture, the possibility that life, once begun, might reach across worlds and epochs. In this sense, the pyramids of Mars are both less and more than they appear. Geological accidents, yes, but also monuments to human curiosity, carved not by Martian hands, but by the restless mind of Earth. Consider for a moment the mathematics of coincidence. Mars is home to millions of hills, mounds, and mesas. Given enough time and enough random processes, some are bound to resemble familiar shapes, faces, pyramids, even cities. On Earth, similar illusions abound. The Old Man of the Mountain in New Hampshire, the Devil's Tower in Wyoming, the Giant's Causeway in Ireland. Each is the product of natural forces, yet each has inspired myths of giants, gods, and ancient architects. The tendency to see intention in accident is not a flaw, but a feature, a survival trait that has, over millennia, guided our ancestors through forests and savannas, helping them distinguish predator from prey, friend from foe. For planetary scientists, the challenge is to balance skepticism with openness, to recognize the limits of data while remaining alert to the possibility of the extraordinary. The search for life on Mars continues, guided by ever more sophisticated instruments, orbiters mapping the distribution of water ice, landers probing the chemistry of soil, rovers drilling into ancient lakebeds in search of organic molecules. The question of civilization, though, remains in the realm of speculation, an extraordinary claim demanding extraordinary evidence. To date, no artifact, no inscription, no unmistakable mark of design has been found. The pyramids, when seen up close, are testament not to intelligence, but to the endless creativity of nature. Yet, the story does not end there. The images from Cydonia and from 1,000 other Martian landscapes continue to inspire artists, writers, dreamers, and scientists alike. They are reminders of the vastness of the unknown, of the humility required to explore it, and of the profound kinship between imagination and discovery. The pyramids of Mars are, in the end, monuments not to lost civilizations, but to the enduring mystery of the cosmos, a mystery written in stone and shadow, awaiting the gaze of the next generation of explorers. In the laboratories of Earth, teams of planetary scientists recreate Martian conditions, subjecting basalt and clay to wind tunnels and freezing temperatures. Their findings, published in journals like Icarus and the Journal of Geophysical Research, illuminate the mechanisms by which angular landforms emerge. Computer models, running on supercomputers at institutions like NASA Ames and the European Space Agency, simulate the aeons-long processes of erosion and deposition, demonstrating how chaos gives rise to pattern. Yet, for all their power, these tools cannot dispel the sense of wonder that attends each new discovery. The search for order in the Martian wilderness is, at its heart, an act of faith, not in the supernatural, but in the capacity of the human mind to comprehend the unfamiliar. The pyramids of Cydonia, stripped of their aura by high-resolution cameras, remain as challenges and invitations, puzzles posed by a planet that has, for billions of years, spun in silence, awaiting the arrival of eyes that can see and minds that can wonder. In the end, the truth about the Martian pyramids is both simple and profound. They are products of geology, shaped by forces that are universal: gravity, wind, time. Yet, in their accidental symmetry, they reveal something essential about the nature of intelligence: the drive to seek meaning, to build stories from stone and shadow, to find in the cosmos a reflection of our own longing. The science is clear, the evidence persuasive, but the myth endures, as myths always do, fueled by the inexhaustible hunger for answers, and by the irrepressible hope that somewhere, out there, the universe is listening. The story of the Martian pyramids is, in a sense, the story of science itself, a story of questions asked and answers sought, of mystery and revelation, of the perpetual dance between wonder and doubt. It is a reminder that the universe is, above all, a place of infinite possibility, where every rock and shadow holds the promise of discovery. As we await the next image, the next transmission from the robots we have sent to Mars, we are reminded that the true monuments are not built of stone, but of curiosity, a force as ancient and enduring as the planets themselves. And so the image lingers, a pyramid in the Martian dawn, its shadow stretching across a sea of dust, a question carved in silence, awaiting an answer that may never come.